In a world where everyone's carrying their own burdens, it's easy to become a dumping ground for others' guilt. Let me share with you a story from a time not too distant in the past, when I found myself sinking under the weight of someone else's guilt. I had a friend, a close companion, who was going through a tumultuous phase of life, and as friends do, I offered a shoulder to lean on. But before I knew it, I'd become the receptacle for all their guilt, regrets, and remorse. I was carrying a heavy load, and it wasn't even mine to bear. Each day was like walking through a thick fog, with this invisible yet palpable weight pressing down on my shoulders. I was drained, my spirits dampened, and my productivity had taken a nosedive. It was as if I was living their life, feeling their guilt, and it left little room for me to experience my own emotions and challenges. I was a ship, adrift in a sea of someone else's guilt, and it was pulling me under. Then came the day of reckoning. My friend had moved on, found a new confidant, and I was left alone with this enormous load of guilt that wasn't even mine. I was exhausted mentally and emotionally, and I realized that I had allowed myself to become a vessel for their guilt. I had allowed their burdens to overshadow my own life, and that, my friends, was not a pleasant realization. But, as they say, every cloud has a silver lining, and this was my wake-up call. I realized that I had been so busy carrying someone else's guilt that I had forgotten to live my own life. I had let their guilt and remorse dictate my happiness, my productivity, and my peace. That was a turning point for me, and it made me realize that it's crucial to not let others' guilt and burdens become my own. Let this be a reminder to you as well, that while empathy is a virtue, you should never let it turn into a burden that weighs you down. The first step to avoiding this trap is recognizing when it's happening. Often people may not even realize they're attempting to pass their guilt onto others. It's a deeply ingrained behavior, often rooted in a desire to feel better about one's own actions or to shift blame away from oneself. This makes it all the more crucial for us to stay vigilant and keep our senses attuned to the subtle signs of such conduct. One of the most telling signs that someone is trying to unload their guilt onto you is a persistent feeling of unease or discomfort during or after your interaction with them. It's like wearing a coat that's a few sizes too small. It's restricting, uncomfortable, and most importantly, it just doesn't feel right. Another sign is feeling emotionally drained after the interaction. Guilt is heavy, my friends. It's a burden that weighs on the soul, and when someone tries to shift it onto you, it can leave you feeling emotionally exhausted. And then there's the blaming game. If you find yourself being blamed for the actions and decisions of others, that's a red flag. Remember, each of us is responsible for our own choices, and it's not fair for someone else to make you feel guilty for theirs. But how do you stay alert to these signs? The answer lies in listening to your intuition and paying attention to how you feel. Your emotions are your internal compass, your personal barometer of what's happening around you. They can alert you to the fact that someone is trying to unload their burden onto you, even if they themselves aren't aware of it. Don't ignore these feelings or brush them aside. Acknowledge them, for they are your allies in this journey. They will help you recognize when you're being made to carry a burden that isn't yours. Remember, your emotions are your compass. They will guide you in recognizing these situations. Once you've identified the burden, the next step is to set boundaries. Setting boundaries is akin to marking your territory. It's like saying, "This is my space, and these are the rules if you wish to enter." It's a crucial step in preserving your peace and well-being. But how do we go about it? Communication is key. It's essential to convey your feelings without blaming or shaming the other person. This is where tact and diplomacy come into play. Imagine a friend who constantly offloads their issues onto you, leaving you emotionally drained. You could say, "I care about you and your problems, but I need to protect my own emotional health." Could we try to balance our conversations with both light-hearted and serious topics? This expresses your need without blaming your friend for their behavior. Or consider a colleague who always piles their work onto you. Instead of accepting the extra load, you might say, "I understand you're swamped, but I have my own tasks to complete. Perhaps we could find another solution." Here, you're setting a boundary without shaming your colleague. These are just a few examples. The language of boundaries is versatile and can be adapted to fit any situation. The key is to express your needs assertively yet respectfully. Remember, it's not about making demands, but about stating your needs. You're not asking for permission, you're informing others of your limits. So begin by identifying what you're comfortable with and what you're not. Understand your limits, then communicate these boundaries to the people around you. Be clear, be firm, but also be kind. There's a fine line between setting boundaries and building walls. We're not trying to shut people out, we're simply protecting our own space. And remember, it's okay if people are taken aback at first. It's okay if they push back. Stand your ground. Your mental and emotional health are worth defending. Setting boundaries is not about being unkind, it's about protecting your peace. Setting boundaries is only the first part of the equation. The real challenge is maintaining them. With that said, let's delve into some strategies that can help you keep those boundaries intact and in the process, preserve your well-being. First on the list is practicing self-care. Self-care is more than just bubble baths and spa days. It's about taking the time to check in with yourself and ensure your needs are being met. It's about listening to your body, your mind, your emotions, and most importantly, acting on what they're telling you. If you're feeling overwhelmed, it might be an indication that a boundary has been crossed. Don't ignore these signals. They are your internal alarm system, alerting you when your boundaries are being violated. Next, don't underestimate the power of support. It's not always easy to maintain boundaries, especially when you're dealing with people who are used to crossing them. Having a support system can make a world of difference. Reach out to trusted friends, family members, or even a professional counselor. These individuals can provide you with the emotional backing you need, reassure you that your boundaries are valid and necessary, and help you strategize ways to uphold them. Lastly, it's essential to regularly check in with your feelings. How do you feel when you interact with certain people? Do you feel drained, stressed, or uneasy? These feelings can be a sign that your boundaries are not being respected. It's okay to adjust your boundaries as needed. They are not set in stone, but rather flexible guidelines that can and should be modified as your needs change. In conclusion, maintaining boundaries requires continuous effort and vigilance. It's not a walk in the park, but the rewards are immense. You'll experience less stress, better relationships, and a greater sense of self-worth. So, don't shy away from the challenge. Embrace it. After all, your well-being is worth fighting for. Remember, maintaining boundaries is a continuous process, not a one-time event. When you refuse to carry others' guilt and burdens, you're not just protecting yourself, you're embracing your freedom. By releasing the weight of others' expectations and guilt, you're setting yourself free. Free to experience life as it was meant to be experienced, unshackled, untethered, and unburdened. Imagine a life where the only expectations you need to meet are your own, where your happiness is not contingent on the approval or disapproval of others, where you're not weighed down by the guilt of not living up to someone else's standards. Doesn't that sound like a breath of fresh air? That's the beauty of embracing your freedom. It allows you to live a life that is authentically yours. A life where you are in control, not guilt or the burdens of others. A life where you are the master of your fate, the captain of your soul. But it's not just about happiness. Embracing your freedom can lead to increased productivity. When you're not constantly worrying about other people's opinions, you suddenly find yourself with a lot more time and energy to devote to your passions, your work, your dreams. You'll be amazed at how much you can achieve when you're not weighed down by unnecessary burdens. And then there's self-esteem. When you refuse to carry others' guilt and burdens, you're sending a powerful message to yourself and the world. You're saying, I am worthy, I'm enough, I don't need to prove myself to anyone. And that, my friends, is a powerful self-esteem booster. So the next time someone tries to load their guilt or burdens onto you, remember this: you have the right to say no. You have the right to protect your peace. You have the right to embrace your freedom. Because at the end of the day, it's your life. It should be lived on your terms, not someone else's. It's not selfish to protect your peace. It's necessary.